Hello, good morning. So as you can see, I am not at Everdeen right now. I'm actually in my hotel room. I am away on my first contract for the winter, and this contract is really lovely. I'm working with a company and a choreographer that I've worked with last year, and I'm just, it's really nice. The team's really great. The contract's really great. I think the show's going to be really great. So yeah, that's what's going on. But apart from that, we talked in a previous video about things that I could film for you guys to kind of keep the momentum rolling with Everdeen, even when I can't actually be at Everdeen. So one of the things you guys really wanted me to talk about, and we're asking about a lot, is my story of how I moved to France. So today, that's this video. That's what we're doing. So if you're new, welcome. And oh, my Coke bottle. I have a Diet Coke here for caffeine needs. And it just snapped so loudly. That was startling. So if you're new to the channel, welcome first off. Secondly, I'm a performer and circus artist, and I've been living in France for about 8 years, which is really, it's flown by. I can't believe it's already been that long. I feel like it was just yesterday that I came. I'm very content here, and I'm very happy with my lifestyle here. So I think that it kind of goes by very quickly. But yeah, it's already been almost 8 years that I've been here. The story of how I came here, well, if I go way back to the beginning, we're in David Copperfield, I am born this. I'm originally from near New Orleans, and we have in that area a really strong French culture. New Orleans has so much French and European influence, even though it's been part of the US for, ages and ages and ages, it still has that culture that hangs on. We have a lot of French language things. There's a lot of French influence. It's really got that tie very strongly. So my whole life, I always felt very connected to France, and I was always very interested in Europe, and especially in France, and in that side of life. It always seemed like a place that I kind of wanted to explore. And I started training as a dancer from a young age. And at 18, I moved to New York, because when you're a dancer, you either move to New York or LA. If you're more of a theater and classical dancer, you go to New York. If you're more of a commercial, hip hop, music video, movies kind of dancer, you go to LA. And I'm definitely more of a theater, classical. I've trained in ballet mainly. So I moved to New York. I was very, lucky with my experience to be able to do a lot of different things in New York. And I met my two best friends, Kat and Megan, who you've seen on this channel also. But after a few years, I was offered a job opportunity in Guam, and I moved to Guam for 2 years. At the end of Guam, I kind of saw the possibilities that there were for dancers working in Asia, especially tall dancers like me. There's really a lot of job opportunities for you. So I went to Kuala Lumpur, and then I went to Macau, and by the end of that, I had been in Asia for almost 4 years. And I'm very, very glad for my time in Asia. I was very happy that I got to experience all that. I met Zoe, one of my best friends. I really, really had such a great experience working in Asia. But at the end of 4 years, I just felt like it was time to move on. So I went back to New York. And when I arrived in New York, I just kind of looked around myself, and I was like, what am I doing here? I've kind of done everything I want to do in New York. There's nothing that I feel like I have to pursue here. Like I feel like I want to pursue other things than what my opportunities are in New York. And I had at the time a girl who's my roommate in Guam, Millie. Hi, Millie. At the time, the girl, I did it again. And she was working at the Moulin Rouge here in Paris. Well, not here, I'm not in Paris right now, but in Paris. And I'd been to Paris several times to visit her and to hang out, and I knew that I really liked Paris. I knew that for me as a tall dancer, there were quite a lot of opportunities, because cabaret is such a integral part of French culture. There's so many cabarets here, and they all prefer, or most of them prefer, taller dancers, as opposed to New York, where most of the jobs are for like medium height people. If you're tall, it actually can be like really a hindrance to getting a job in New York. Or if you're just an unusual height at all, it really can be a struggle. And that was something I was kind of tired of fighting with. And I knew in Paris it would be a positive. So I kind of wanted to pursue that. So I decided I was going to figure out how to move to Paris. Now, most people move from the US to Paris or from the US to France because they already have a job, and the system is very, very much designed for that. So, really, if your employer is sponsoring your visa, it's fairly straightforward. But I did not have that, and with dance companies, that's pretty much a thing that's not going to happen unless you're being hired like directly by the Paris Opera Ballet, which was not the case for me. I knew I was going to have to do the whole thing myself. I started on the paperwork. It took me 6 months to research and figure out what kind of visa I was going to apply for. I decided to apply for a skills and talents visa, which is designed for artists or people of unusual talents who can enrich the culture of France or benefit to the culture of France in some way. It took me a full 6 months to do all the paperwork for that, track down all the documents I had to have, because you have to have so many documents, so many. And then I also had to prove that I had enough funds in the bank to pay for my life for 1 year. Fortunately, I had all my savings from working in Asia, and my parents helped me out a bit as well, so that I could show that I had a lump sum of savings, enough to let me live for a year if I couldn't work. The other thing that I needed to show to get to just to apply for the visa, not even to get the visa, but to apply for it, was that I already had an address in France. So, because by this time Millie had moved on from Moulin Rouge and was no longer there, I couldn't use her address. I didn't really know anyone else, so I went to Paris. I stayed for about 3 weeks, and I started looking at apartments. Looking for apartments in France is notoriously hard because most apartments want you to have a CDI or permanent contract. They want you to have a really, really high income. They want you to already be settled in France with a visa and with everything. But I was extraordinarily lucky because I did find an apartment that a guy who was not a professional landlord was renting. It was just, he had this apartment. He was living in London. He wanted to basically sublet his apartment while he was living in London. So fortunately that worked out. I had an apartment, I had an address, I could finally apply for my visa. So I got all of my little bundle of things together, all of my papers, all of my documents, my bank proofs, my proof of address, and basically a novel that I had written about why I am an artist and why I would be able to benefit the culture in France, and things about my CV as an artist and my performance DVDs. I had like little DVDs slotted into the binder of papers. I had photos. I had all kinds of stuff about how much I had worked and where I had worked and what I had done. And I went into the visa office, and the thing that is basically your worst nightmare if you are an immigrant applying for a visa happened is that you got a grumpy person at the office. One thing that you learn when you're immigrating to another country or when you're living in another country and trying to stay is that your visa process depends, I would say like 90%, on the luck of the draw, who is at the desk at the time that you show up to apply for whatever paperwork you need. Really, that in my experience has been the deciding factor. And on this day, I had the worst luck. I got someone who was already extremely grumpy and obviously very short-tempered when I walked up to the desk. And then as I was telling this person, I'm here to apply for this visa, here's the form, here's this form, they very obviously did not know what the visa I was applying for was. This was not an obscure visa. Like, the skills and talents card is something that quite a lot of people have. And since this happened in the past 8 years, and the more I look back on it, the more frustrated and slightly outraged I get, because I should have gotten that visa. Basically, I fit all of the criteria. I know people who did get that visa who are in an extremely similar situation to me. I think that the reason I didn't get that visa, because I didn't get that visa in the end, is because this person simply didn't understand what what it was, and didn't want to take the time to try to figure it out, and wanted to just pass me through as quickly as possible, which is what they did. So I was denied for the Skills and Talents Card visa, which would have been a 4-year visa. It would have been a visa that allowed me to work like a French citizen. It would have been extremely useful to me. However, I did get approved for another visa that was called the Long Séjour visa. Great in the sense that I was able to come to France. Bad in the sense that it was only a 1-year visa, so I could only stay for 1 year before having to renew it, and that I wasn't legally allowed to work. I was only allowed to be in France. I was not allowed to work. So I thought about it, and I thought, I'm going to go try this. I'm going to live off my savings for a bit. I'm going to figure out how to make this work. But to be able to figure that out, I need to be on the ground in France. So I came to France, I moved into my apartment, and I started trying to look for ways to make things happen, to change my situation for the better. The first thing that happened that changed my situation was that I was hired for a circus in Switzerland. Weirdly enough, I could legally work in Switzerland, even though I couldn't work in France. I don't know why that's a thing, but I even, when I got hired, I went to the Swiss embassy and I said, "Are you sure this is okay?" And they looked at my paperwork like, "Oh yeah, you can work in Switzerland, come to Switzerland." So I was like, okay. So I went to Switzerland. I worked for 3 months with the circus. That let me make a little bit of money. That let me make some contacts in Europe. It wasn't a contract that I would particularly recommend to anyone. I won't mention what circus it was, but I will mention that the choreographer was an extremely harsh person during that whole contract. It was 3 months long. We didn't have any days off, and she was I can only describe her as extremely harsh. But I stuck it out. I did the whole contract. I got the money, and I got the contacts, and I made the best of it. Came back to France, and I saw that Disneyland Paris was having auditions. I went and auditioned. I'd never thought about working at Disneyland before. I didn't really know what the job was, but I got hired, and for the next almost 2 years, was a dancer in the parade at Disneyland Paris. I did recently go back to Disney with Laurent, and it was the first time that I'd been back to Disney since I stopped working there. And it made me remember all of the really positive things about working there. When I look back at it, I had some lovely friends working there. The parade is very interesting to do because you can change roles every day, so that can be really nice. Overall, Disney was a nice experience. I knew though that I didn't want to stay there for years and years and years. I didn't want to, make it a permanent home for myself. I wanted to really be more in the cabarets and that kind of side of performing. And at the time I was moving changing towards being an aerialist, which is more what I do now. I was already looking forward towards being more of an aerial performer than a dancer, and I wanted to kind of start making that switch. So after I'd worked at Disney for a little over a year, I was eligible to apply for a 4-year visa, which I did, and I got. And that is the story of how I got my longer term visa. Finally, with the 4-year visa, I was able to know I would be able to stay in France for 4 years. I was able to work anywhere I wanted. And so a few months later, I turned in my notice at Disney. I moved on, and I've been very lucky to work consistently in France, and also in all parts of France, which is really, really great. I've really worked, I think, in every region of France. I haven't worked in the north that much, but I have worked in the north, and a lot of other regions I've kind of consistently worked in. I've worked in the Alps 6 or 7 times at this point. So it's just been lovely. I've finally sorted out the lifestyle that I wanted, and then when COVID happened, there was no work for artists, obviously, and I kind of started thinking about what do I want to move on to after I am not able to perform myself. At this point in my life, I'm still in good shape. I'm still very comfortable performing every day. It's not a tax on my body very much. So that's really good. That's really lucky. But someday there will be a day where it is very hard to do aerial every day for an extended period, and I'll need to start looking at other career paths, and I don't want that to come as a surprise. So I started thinking about that during COVID of what could my next career path be. And that is when I had the idea for Everdeen, because I always have loved old houses. My dream was to have a beautiful old house to live in and to restore and to make into a home. And then I thought about how that could also be tied into having an aerial training space, teaching workshops in that space, really making it like a community for artists and for circus performers. And so in 2021, on December the 24th, 2021, I signed the final papers to buy Everdeen, and on Christmas Eve, it was my first night in the house. I stayed there for Christmas Eve, Christmas, and Boxing Day, and then I had to go back to a circus that I was doing in Germany. But I now have that plan set in motion, and Everdeen is a thing that is happening. It's happening a bit slowly because of multiple reasons, but the momentum is going towards that becoming not only a training space, not only a home, but kind of a career plan C for some time in the future, as something that I can do more full time with the teaching and with the workshops someday when I'm older and when I'm ready to move more into that phase of life. So that is how I've come to this point in my life, to being in France, to working at Everdeen, and to just generally being in this hotel room right now. I think I've been extremely lucky in many ways. There have been setbacks, like not getting the original visa that I wanted, or like things taking longer than I want to at Everdeen, but mostly I think this is a story of just being willing to take a risk and then having enough luck that risk becomes something extremely positive. And that's happened to me several times in the course of the last 8, 9, 10 years of this story. And I do feel extremely fortunate and extremely pleased with where I'm ending up in life at the moment. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it wasn't too talky and explainy, or at least if it was very talky, I hope it at least was interesting. I hope you liked the dog barking somewhere the whole time. He got his guest star role. I will credit him. Please follow the dog. Don't forget to subscribe to the dog. And also, please don't forget to subscribe to me, to this channel, to Everdeen, for multiple reasons. But firstly, because if you're not subscribed, you're definitely missing videos. You're definitely missing out on some of the journey. The only way to really make sure you get all of the videos that I'm putting out is to subscribe and to hit the little bell so it notifies you when there's a new video. And also because that helps the YouTube algorithm see that this is something that you like, and then it will show this to more people and show the channel to more people and help the channel grow, and that would be extremely helpful and very much appreciated. And whether you're subscribed or not, or whether you're already subscribed, or whether you're that dog, don't forget to like this video as well, because that's also very helpful. And I think that is it for today. So with that, I will see you guys next time.